All right. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Sales Pipeline Radio. I'm your host, Matt Heinz. Very excited to have you all here. I can't believe it, Ben. It is Memorial Day weekend already. I feel like I just watched the Rose Bowl. I'm serious. Like, it was
I'm
just
so
New
ready.
Year's. And here we are, but it's all good. If you are joining us live today in the middle of your workday and work week, thanks for being here. We're excited to have you here. If you wouldn't mind saying hi in the comments, we'll be able to see that. If you have a question, if you have a rebuttal, if you have a rant based on what we talk about today, we'd love to see that. We can bring your comment up on screen and we'll have some fun with it that way. If you're watching and listening on demand, thank you so much for doing so. You can find every episode of Sales Pipeline Radio on demand at salespipelineradio.com. Very excited to have with us today B2B legend, co-founder of Peel, graduate of Techstars 2024, Ben Henson. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, pal. I'm doing
What did
great.
I miss in that list? What did I miss? Proud University of Vermont graduate.
Yes, proud dad to two wonderful kids, an 8 and 4-year-old. Happy gardener. Happy for spring. Live in Bend, Oregon. Have never been able to even consider leaving B2B demand gen
We're stuck here now. This is
the last 25 years. I think this is it for me. I think we're here. This is it. The destination has been reached.
So I want to talk about Peel. I want to talk about entrepreneurship. I want to talk about the arc of your career and what you have done. You were at I wasn't say startup, but just a tech company running sales for 11 plus years.
Yeah.
And now you're running a business, and that's a big change. I want to talk about that. But first, you mentioned that you're a gardener. Like, that could mean a lot of things. What are we putting in the dirt?
Well, my wife is a master gardener, so a lot of times I'm just the laborer, but we have a huge greenhouse. Bend, Oregon is a very wintry climate. It's a snow-centric town for, 5 or 6 months of the year. So we have multiple year-old tomatoes that are vines this thick.
Mm-hmm.
We grow kale, we grow all the different hot peppers. We do all sorts of stuff. And I'm actually a pretty big hunter as well. So we have this fantasy dream of hunting and harvesting the meat and growing the vegetables and our little hippie enclave in the middle of Bend.
That's awesome. That's really fun.
Cool. Yeah.
So like I said, you were Integrate for a very long time,
Mhm.
Rose through the ranks, running sales there. What went through your mind? Because I've been through this process as well. Why the hell did you decide to start a business? What made you decide that going from employee to entrepreneur was a good idea?
I have this affliction where I'm a eternal optimist, and I just can only really see things through rose-colored glasses in a lot of ways. And it was a couple different things, man. I mean, before 11 years at Integrate, I had worked nearly 8 years at TechTarget, went through their public offering and sort of went through that process, and worked with Craig Rosenberg and Scott Albro at Tipo, then Focus, which is when we first met, which was 2008, 2009, something like that. And then, 11 and a half years at Integrate. And when I was exiting there, I was thinking about two different things. I was thinking about how can I create something for myself, right, where I can be more in control of my own destiny. I went through private equity acquisition through Integrate. I went through an IPO at TechTarget. I went through a strategic acquisition at Focus. And in each of those different cases, I just felt out of control of my own destiny. Yep. And I couldn't actually be in charge of what happened and would I be able to profit in the good results that I had helped create.
Right.
So that was kind of like one part of it. And the other part was I had a really great partner who was willing to let me take a risk and is a person who has insurance and makes a good income. And sort of like, so the risk seemed a little bit lighter. Yeah. And it seemed like I could kind of try and grab that brass ring a little bit better. And then the third was the market opportunity. So when a guy spends 25 years in demand gen, understanding that intricacy and where there's opportunity felt very clear to me. It just felt very obvious. And it wasn't creating a new demand gen product necessarily. It was how can we actually give the buyer what they would be interested in consuming? And how can we remove friction from a part of a process that has gotten so overwhelmed that it's in jeopardy of crashing the whole thing? The whole go-to-market motion is in jeopardy of being crashed because we've overdone all these different things. Yeah. And when my co-founders and I were iterating on later versions of Peel, it really became obvious to all of us that there's a way to do things differently, and there's a way to be helpful and useful and that just seemed too good to pass up. And then, you meet a couple like-minded guys that are animals, and away we go.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Your experience in go-to-market roles and in MarTech, I think, really made you uniquely positioned to sort of see the problem, right? And every good product, every good opportunity starts with like a problem not being solved. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that to us was really the biggest thing. So, in each of those different roles I've had at each of those companies, I've always worked with marketers trying to solve marketing issues. So, I've been a seller living at the intersection between sales and marketing, and how difficult that job is, and how there isn't real opportunity to work outside of the traditional confines. Now, in the last 2 years, AI has come onto the scene and a whole bunch of different things have happened, but the actual process of a organization and an individual having a conversation still is disjointed. So as we looked at it, what we originally thought was the part of the process that seems to be ripe for opportunity isn't the demand gen. I know I can capture as many CMOs at this size organization as I want. I can get them to download a white paper. I could get them to go to a webinar. I know what events they're going to go to. I can find the people, but how can I actually engage with them in a useful way? And how can I help them? And that's what the opportunity rang loud and clear to us. And the buyer has told us what she and he have wanted. And that's leave us the hell alone. Like, don't come at us. So with AI, was there an asynchronous way to go in there at the time that they're actually thinking about this one problem that I could solve for them? Is there a way for me to engage with them in a meaningful way that's actually going to move their process along a little bit? And then answer the question that's never been answered, which is, how do they actually feel about my thing after they've gotten a little taste of it? After they've read a white paper, did they think that was a thinly veiled sales conversation that they just had? Or did they think that that was actually useful?
Right. We're talking today on Sales Pipeline Radio with Peel co-founder Ben Henson, animal welfare enthusiast. We'll get into that a little bit later as well.
Yeah.
And we're using, I mean, just full disclosure, we're using Peel as well, like, using it for testimonial development, using it for customer onboarding. There's so many interesting use cases for this. I assume you guys are still in what I think Sangram will describe as like problem market fit, right? And saying like, we know there's a problem. Is there a market for solving that problem? And how do we monetize a market to solve that problem? So it's a little bit of a game of Jenga you play at those early stages. Talk about that process a little bit. Because I think a lot of people listening to this show, like, have not started a business, have not been grappling with that firsthand. Just, I mean, don't want you to give away any secret sauce, but like, talk about that balancing act.
It's incredibly difficult. When I started at Integrate, we were a B2C company, and we very quickly were rolling into B2B and sort of had to create a market for that. And that was, lead orchestration or lead management, and the great Scott Vaughn and others sort of helped frame that conversation. So I do have some experience in trying to create a market, but the challenge that we face today is AI is a mandate with every CMO worldwide pushing down onto their organization, but that means nothing. That's saying like use technology, right? So it becomes a question of like, where is that efficacy? What's the priority for them right now, et cetera? So we have this friction in being an AI company when everyone's interested in AI, but also thinks that they understand and how to use AI in myriad ways. So that's an interesting market force that happens. And then the second thing that we're really learning more and more about that has been more of a friction point than we planned on is our tool can be as great as it is, but if the marketers aren't getting it out to the market, then people don't see it.
Yeah.
So being able to have ownership and influence over things outside of our control has been probably the most interesting challenge in the whole process. Once we've actually onboarded a client, it's actually easier in the sales process, because when you're talking about it, it's a lot easier than saying, okay, now we need ownership of, we got to get nurture emails out. We got to hang off your page. So now you have your web people sort of getting involved, et cetera. So it's just a bit more of the complexity in addition to finding that product market fit. The last interesting thing for us is we have such a horizontal product. When you think about who all would you want to have a conversation with, that list gets real long, real fast.
Yeah.
And so stacking the priority and the intent around, okay, this is the thing that we have to go solve for. Let's go learn how to do this well. And then bring that out into other spaces has been an interesting challenge in of itself.
I bet it has.
Yeah.
Well, I definitely encourage folks to check out peel.ai. I think there's so many different use cases for this, and definitely, give it a whirl. Let Ben know what you think along the way. I want to change gears a little bit and just talk about life and just finding your path. You've had a long, successful career in go-to-market. In the midst of your time at Integrate, moved from the Bay Area up to Bend. Talk about life design a little bit as the way you think about it. In terms of like you just even in our last 10 minutes, you've talked about your amazing partner, your kids, living in Bend, spending time outside. I mean, work's important, obviously. And when you're starting something, you have a passion for it. And I know firsthand it can be all consuming. But if it's all consuming, then that doesn't lead to a very good life, quite honestly. So I just would love to hear you for others that are in some version of that journey, maybe early stage of it. Kind of what have you learned?
When I was getting ready to exit Integrate, I created a mind map for myself. And anyone that's interested, I'd be more than happy to share it. We can link it in the comments of this post on LinkedIn. But the idea to me was, I don't know what the answers are, but I can think of a bunch of questions. And a bunch of those questions that came up to me were lifestyle. Do I want to make a comfortable living and try and figure out a way to work 25 hours a week? Do I want to try and go grab a brass ring and create financial independence for my family and myself? Do I want to incorporate mentorship, which is something I really enjoy, into my professional world, or do I want to pull that back? Do I want to work for somebody else? And if I work for somebody else, what do I want that opportunity to be? Do I want it to be safe and secure in an enterprise, or do I want it to be wilder, more chaotic, but highly creative in a startup?
Right.
And I just kept asking myself more and more questions. And ultimately, through my questioning, even without answering those questions, it became abundantly clear to me what I wanted to do. And the catalyst for me ended up being, do I want to be a W-2 anymore? I could answer that question as no. I did not want to work for someone anymore. I wanted to chart my own path.
Yep.
So that was my first clear decision that I made. And then I was able to very quickly build a whole bunch of other things. Do I work in an advisory for myself? Do I start a company, et cetera? So I think that, to me, it's asking the right questions, even if you're not capable of answering them right now for yourself, that is so incredibly useful and impactful. And because I was able to do that at times when I get out of balance, which I'm often out of balance as a founder, I can actually say, okay, this is intentional. This is a period of time. This is what I'm doing for it. I can name it. I can talk to my wife about it. I can even talk to my kids about it. Sort of like make this stuff known and understood. And I'm also a huge fan of constant evolution of myself and who I am. I don't want to be known as this person who I was 10 years ago or 15 years ago or even 6 months ago, because I'm not. I'm trying to evolve every single day. And a lot of that means, like, Monday I'm taking off and my family and I are going camping for 3 days up at a lake, and it's going to be awesome. And I'm probably going to take the week of July 4th off. And that was awesome. The first 10 months of this business until really probably February, I was working pretty close to 100 hours a week probably. And I got way the hell out of balance and I got really screwed up. And I was having actual like physical things happening, and my co-founders were having the same things. We realized and were able to adjust and recalibrate almost in real time to say, okay, nothing's going to get resolved if I don't send that 97th email today. It's okay. Like I can peel sort of a couple layers back here and see the goodness, see the forest for the trees. And I think just that actual perspective of looking around for a minute has been really, really good for me. And then the last thing would be, there's certain non-negotiables that became negotiable. Physical fitness for me was one where I had really prioritized that for a long period of time. I stopped doing it. I was getting depressed. I was getting more anxious. I was sort of just work. I refound those things, those cores for me that helped me throughout my day. And now I realize their value more than I think I did before.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing all that. I think that was great. I think it's definitely, to me, it's a journey. It's a journey that is forward progress, but not always in that direction. Sometimes there's up, sometimes there's up and down.
Totally.
Sometimes there's wobbling where you are. Sometimes there's a little backward. But I think a lot of this is, it's all written in pencil, man. I mean, where you want to spend your time, what you value, different seasons of your life, maybe different parts of that. But I liked your idea of just being intentional about what those things are, communicating that with the people you love, and being willing to adjust. And your concept of having questions that you don't have the answers to, I think it was Donald Rumsfeld talked about those as the known unknowns, right? Things you don't know, but things you don't know. And that's valuable, right? Because not only if you name those, you're more likely to see them and identify them later, or to know that, like, kind of put them in perspective and say, like, how many of those are really important and what else is really important in your life that you want to prioritize. So
Totally.
I appreciate it. Well, we're out of time for today. Definitely everybody check out peel.ai. Ben, where else can people learn more about you?
Yeah, it's getpeel.ai.
Right, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And yeah, we're on LinkedIn. We're all over LinkedIn. We haven't gotten back on the other socials. That's one of those balance things in action that we've chosen one social platform, and that's where we live. So we'd love to see any feedback anyone has. We just put a really, really incredible update on getpeel.ai, which is really leaning into the whole notion of vibe coding and vibe marketing, and you can build a conversation all by yourself. So any feedback, boy, we just love to hear it, and any other way that we can ever help, we're here for it. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, cheers.
Thanks everyone for listening and watching. We'll see you next week, another episode, Sales Pipeline Radio.
Happy Memorial Day. Thanks.
Have a good weekend, everybody.
See ya.